Hello, everyone. Just give it a couple more minutes before we get started to give more people on YouTube a chance to join us on the live stream. Let's give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started with today's open discussion. Okay. All right, let's open up today's study session. Sorry, open discussion. Reciting the prayer for spiritual workers. Prayer for spiritual workers. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their limitations, would smite me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their weakness, would not heed me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their ignorance, would defile you through me. And I ask, Almighty God, O wondrous power, that your strength may be given to me now, so that I might be fortified by this, so that I might go forward bravely into the world, and despite reception, send forth my love of thee throughout all races of man. Almighty God, give me the power and strength to rise above my karmic weakness, the deficiencies in the pattern of my evolution, so that I might evolve and become stronger, I, and even stronger in thy everlasting light. O God, thy will be done. All right, everyone, welcome to Open Discussion and Various Topics, Class 90. As per usual, feel free to ask any questions or post any comments you have in the chat. If you're joining us on YouTube, if you're joining us via Zoom, you can use the chat as well, or you can use the raise hand feature to ask your questions audibly. Now, before we begin, there was a handout that I wanted to share, a diagram, because on Friday, during our study session of Chapter 8 of the text, The Ancient Language of the Soul, I was not able to get it to display properly. So let me post this up really quick so we can take a look at it. It's referring to the modification of Shakti power. So if you remember from Chapter 8, we discussed Shakti. We looked at the Mahabhutas and how the Shiva releases the Nada, which reveals the Shakti, and then the different aspects or manifestations of that Shakti power, how that power is modified throughout creation. So let's take a look at it. At the modification of the Shakti power, at the very top, we have Shiva. Shiva represents all power, the source of all things, the absolute, the creator of all things, and the destroyer of all things, the unmanifested background of all manifestation. Shiva is the endless static potential of all things. Shiva is the absolute positive energy that brings forth all manifestation and pulls everything out of manifestation. Shakti is the absolute negative energy that acts as a creative force for nature. Nada is absolute neutral energy that sustains and balances and connects to all things. And so Shiva, from Nada into Shakti, and we have these four principles of Shakti. Actually, Nima, I think there's 5, right? This was an older chart. Excuse me. So there's Shakti as mind, universal aspect of consciousness within the Shakti power. I'm sorry, Nima?
It's four Shakti principles.
Okay.
It's only 4 Shakti principles.
Okay. We have Shakti as prana, an aspect of Shakti power that represents absolute energy. Shakti as Vyana, an aspect of Shakti power that is the framework of all knowledge in its actions. Then it's Shakti as love, Shakti power representing the powers of preservation and absolute bliss. Let me zoom in a bit. There we go. From there we have the Mahabhutas, etheric elements of the universe. We have Akasa, meaning etheric space and sound. Vayu, etheric speed, air and touch. Tijas, expansion, fire and colors. Apas, contraction, water and taste. And Prithivi, cohesive resistance, earth and smell. And we go to the sun and the 360 tattvic rays, and those tattvic rays are distributed as follows. You have 64 tattvic rays for manas, and associated with the Ajna chakra, the Christ center. 72 tattvic rays for the prana udana, associated with the Vishuddha chakra, or the throat chakra. Then 54 tattvic rays for prana, associated with the anahata chakra, or the heart center. And another set of 52 tattvic rays for samana at the manipura chakra, the solar plexus center. 62 tattvic rays for vyana, associated with the svadhisthana chakra, or the sex center. And then finally, the remaining 56 tattvic rays with apana, associated with the muladhara chakra at the base of the spine center. All right. So again, that goes along with chapter 8 of the ancient language of the soul, text that we're currently studying in our Friday study sessions. If you have the Kindle version of the text, the tables are a bit difficult to read, but in the PDF version and the physical book version, they're easier to see. So if you already have the Kindle version, you can send us an email and we might be able to supply the PDF version of the text for you as well. I said, do we have any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. I'm going to turn my camera on here in a minute once I get myself together. Here we are. I had to switch from the computer from the phone to the computer. Can you see me okay?
Yes, I can see and hear you all right.
Hello, everybody. So I'm brand new to this, and what you just showed was a lot of goodness, but I'm just wondering where to begin. Like, I am familiar with the chakras. I'm familiar with yoga. I did a quick little lookup of your Mystic Knowledge Center. And I wanted to say that you're very blessed to have the parents that you had that, introduced you to this, but like, I'm trying to get into something more natural and more holistic and spiritual. For starters, to just deal with my anxiety and help me to fall asleep at night. So I was just wondering if you could recommend anything. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us and for taking a look at the website and reading the information.
There are several practices that you can do with yoga. Pranayama is one of them. Are you familiar with pranayama?
No.
Okay, pranayama is one of the 8 limbs of yoga from Raja Yoga. And there are relaxation practices in the beginning of Raja Yoga to relax the body and to relax the mind. It's all about, Raja Yoga is a yoga of mental control. And pranayama is to regulate the energy in the body. Because the largest amount of energy you take into the body is through breath. So the ancient teachings teach us to regulate the breath in order to create different states of mind. We if we don't breathe, then we lose consciousness. So they realized this thousands of years ago. So by regulating the breath, we can move into different levels of consciousness, and sleep is one of those consciousness that we can move into. So it's through visualization, it's through imagination, visualization, and breath that you can calm the mind and move into a sleep realm. And there's a book on our website called The Science of Breath by Yogi Ramacharaka. There are several different techniques in there in order to relax the body and to move into a sleep state. They also have we also have a book. It's a free book too. Is you just download it. Ramacharaka did one on Raja Yoga, which gives you various steps to calming the mind, relaxing the mind, and altering your states of consciousness. And it's a simple read. Is for people who are just entering into yoga, because it's absent of a lot of Sanskrit words, and it's just the translator was actually a lawyer who came under this Swami Ramacharaka, and wrote 15 or 20 books for his students. But I would tell you to check out those books, Science of Breath and Raja Yoga. And the first book, just for contents, is the ABC of yoga, of yoga philosophy, is 14 lessons by the same author. But
Okay, how do you spell that second one? Raja, is that R-A-J-A, yoga?
yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You see any other questions? I had to switch internet, so that's why it took me a while to speak.
And so, Jay, if you go to our website, mysticknowledge.org, and if you click on ebook library -1, you'll see this page. I'm sharing the screen so you can see it. And this is Yogi Ramacharaka / William Walker Atkinson. And in that section, you'll see the text that Nehemiah just recommended, along with other texts as well.
Yeah, it's actually it's Hindu yogi science of breath, number 1. Number 2 is the 14 lessons, and number 4 is a series of lessons in Raja Yoga. The number 1 is just exercises, and number 2 tells you the philosophy behind it. Number 4 goes into the philosophy and exercises too. There's one there on Hatha Yoga if you're into Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is the physical part of yoga, which prepares you for Kundalini Yoga.
Wow, I see so much that I can sink my teeth into. I'm not even where you are at yet, but I'm gonna find it. But I'm just like scrolling down the page. I see psychic development. Oh my goodness, just all these things that I want to get into, because I have gifts as well. It's just I didn't have anybody that was right teaching me things. So it's very refreshing to be able to come across all this information. So thank you again.
Okay.
Oh, and while I'm here,
Yeah.
the handout that I've posted up first is actually a diagram from the text that we're currently reading. So on Fridays, we have study sessions. And the goal with the study sessions is to actually work through all, if not most, of the text that we have available on our website or will continue to release and publish in the future. So on Fridays, we'll read a couple of the chapters. We're currently working through this book, Ancient Language of the Soul, the Mystic Knowledge of Mantra, which was written by our teacher, Nehemiah Davis. We're currently, so this past Friday, we just finished chapters 7 and 8. And that diagram I posted was from chapter 8. It's a bit of an advanced text, but the benefit of us reading it and studying it now is that we have the author available to ask questions and to expand on certain sections. And you can also go back to all the videos and classes that we have on YouTube and review them, and spanning subjects of, Raja Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, healing, even some classes on numerology. So our classes span many subjects in the metaphysical disciplines and sciences. And so the study session is just an additional way to help our students assimilate this information and further enhance their spiritual practice. So you can go back and view those classes as well. And as we work through the ebook library, we hope to build up the study sessions into more of a kind of an informal book club, really, or book reading, to allow us to further enhance our study, kind of a collective Jnana Yoga practice, and thereby, build ourselves up as better students in the mystic and occult sciences. So that's the Ancient Language of the Soul. There's also several other books available throughout the ebook library. My goal, it may seem like a lot, but yes, my goal is to work through most, if not all, of these texts together and have a lot of fun with it. And this library will continue to expand as we work the website and grow the International Mystic Knowledge Center. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, as it were. More coming soon. So do we have any other questions?
I have another question if no one.
Sure, go ahead.
In the prayer that you started off with, you spoke about karma. And it also was a prayer to God, given by Jesus, I think I saw. And I just wanted to, I'm trying to formulate how to ask the question. In regards to karma, is it something that you all believe like we have to work through in order to grow? Is it from our ancestors' actions? I was just trying to wrap my head around what you all meant, I guess, in regards to the prayer and, having karma, because usually you don't see those two together.
Yeah, karma is, the word karma actually means action. And all action that exists is karma. So therefore, all things in creation is governed by the laws of action. And the laws of action is those laws that God put into place. It's the framework of creation itself. Because if we go back to the original, to any original teachings, it doesn't matter whether it's, it doesn't matter what religion you're coming from, it always talk about that in the beginning there was only God, and then God spoke the word, and the word was God, and then creation came about. Well, when you go to examine those things, you will see that the initial creative word was enacting the laws of karma, and in order to bring about movement, because God is all things, and all things is God. So therefore, in our limited reality, then we can only describe that as a static potential, or potential of everything. God had nowhere to move, because everything is God, and God is everywhere. So there was no movement. It was just total awareness. And then God took a slither of its existence and created a universe, maybe multiple universes, as far as we know. And in that multiple universe, there had to be a framework of laws, and those frameworks of laws is the laws that govern all actions, all movement. So that's what karma is. So all of us are working out our karma as we move from involution to evolution. So we had to involve ourselves to a point where we can begin to move back towards the absolute, which is God. So in other words, we had to come out of because all of us are aspects of God. We had to come out of a all awareness state to a conscious state, which limited our awareness, and then move back towards this all awareness state. Now, how do we do that? We do that on a journey of karma. That's why when you hear someone talk about reincarnation, they always say karma and reincarnation, if they know the subject, because there's laws that govern how you move forward. And those laws are divine laws. And if you stay within the divine laws, your karma will accelerate. Your movement towards the absolute will be accelerated. So all yogas are karma yogas. So because karma governs action. Yoga itself means union with God. So if I say Nani yoga, that means wisdom. I'm going to use wisdom to make union with God. If I say Bhakti yoga, that means devotion to God. I'm going to use the devotion to God to make union with God. The same thing with Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is mental development. I'm going to use a mental development techniques to make union with God. And all of these are governed by the laws of karma, because laws of karma governs actions. You can have an action that brings negative karma on you, and you can have an action that brings positive karma on you, or you can have an action that brings both negative and positive, reactions or pressure towards you. Dr. George King, which was a Western master of yoga, he framed it and said karma is pressure towards conformity, because the laws of karma pressure you towards conforming to the laws of God. If you put your hands in the fire, you get burned. That's pressure teaching you not to put your hands in the fire. So all lessons in life, all actions bring about a particular pressure towards conformity. Jesus said it's as simple as you sow, so shall you reap. Before Jesus, Buddha said, action and reaction is opposite but equal. And it all means the same thing, because if you create an action, there's a cause, there's a reaction, which gives you data on how to make that, on how to make the second action like that, and the third and the fourth. Because why? Because the reaction taught you something, and it pushed you towards a position of consciousness. So that's what karma is. Karma is the divine laws of God, and all of us have karmic patterns. That's why we are that's why we are where we are right now, because of our karmic patterns. Because these are the lessons that we must learn in this level of consciousness that we are existing in. I hope that answers your question.
It did. I'm just like, wow. I'm just like, wow. Thank you. Yes, it did.
Any other questions? Welcome, Charlie. It's good to see you again. Hope all is well. All right, welcome to everyone joining us on YouTube. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer those for you. I think later on in today's open discussion, we will take a look at chapter 6. I think last time we looked at the highlights and some comments and questions from chapter 5. Today we'll, if we have time, we'll take a look at chapter 6. And then next time, we will look at 7 and 8. So we'll be just a little bit behind the Friday study session, but that's okay. It'll give everyone a chance to review the material and come up with their own questions before we move into the open discussion part of it. So let me put this up in term, but you can still feel free to ask any questions or comments you may have. The floor is always open throughout our study discussions.
That's Ivan Caballero. Is that you, Ivan? Okay.
Hey, Ivan. It's good to see you. How are you? Hope all is well. And we should talk off camera after class. I'd like to catch up with you. All right, so I have a question here. Does the karma of sentient beings on Earth have a karmic effect on all other living things in the universe? Or is our karma tied to the Earth? And then a follow-up, we are beginning to explore space on a larger scale. How will this affect humanity?
Our karma is universal. The teachings teach us that one of the reasons why the universe is, or the galaxy, let's talk about the galaxy, because the universe is too much to talk about really at our level of advancement. But one of the reasons why the galaxy is in the position that it's in is because of the inhabitants of the galaxy. So because we're taught that the great ones, we live by the grace of the great ones, and the great ones are holding up their movement towards the absolute in order to allow every other part of creation to catch up, in other words, in order to move back into what they call in the ancient teachings the Godhead, which is the absolute. So it's a network, it's a karmic network where everyone have to move forward. And at one point in our development, we would stop and reach back and hold and in order to gather everyone, the same way this Mother Earth is doing. This Mother Earth, if you go back to the ancient teachings, this Mother Earth was far more advanced on her level of evolution than she's currently is, although she's going to be much more now because of her sacrifice. But when we look at the Adamic man, going back 18,600,000 years ago, we're told that the Adamic man consciousness was working from the heart chakra, and the Mother Earth had to reverse when she took on the mankind today, Meldic man, when she took on man, and the consciousness of man had to move to the base of the spine, and even the animal kingdom had to move below the base of the spine. So what does this mean? This means that there was a huge metamorphosis to the Mother Earth. The Mother Earth had to become denser. She had to move into a dense into a solidification process, which moved the consciousness of all living beings down. Instead of being risen up, they had to go down, and this was a great sacrifice to her, because it added millions of years onto her journey in order to sacrifice for us. And so yes, all of our karma is connected to a certain degree. That's why when you go into start reading and studying about karma, you hear this thing about group consciousness, collective consciousness, or a karmic configuration of a particular town or a particular level of consciousness or a particular group of people. I mean, you could see that when you walk into a university or you travel to a town, you could feel the consciousness of that town. If you go into a different country, you could feel the consciousness of that country. So because why? There's a group consciousness, and all of them are working out their karma together in a sense. So that's a long subject to go into, but yes, we are, the universe is connected. I hope that answers your question.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
I heard the tail end of what you were saying in regards to different countries having karma that they need to work through. And I automatically thought about, why is it that Black people have it so rough? What are your thoughts on that? At home in America and abroad, I've been to different countries. I'm Black. As far as I know, we ain't did nothing to nobody, but yet and still we're suffering on a large scale. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's a secret to all races, and one of the great secrets of the Black race is that we were the original people. We were the original body that was here on Earth in several root races. Matter of fact, that's why it would appear that our body is so usable in any situation. The Black body, although there's not too many original Black bodies on Earth today. There's no original race on Earth today anyway, because we have mixed so much. But even scientists have realized, and if you notice their genetic, when they start doing all their formulas, they always capitalize the Black genes or chromosomes of Black people in their mathematics. And it's because we were the original people here. And when you are the original one, it's like a domino effect. We made a mistake, and every other race is our offsprings, and we are suffering from that mistake because of the things we did. Now, most recently, going back, I would say, in 800 some thousand years ago, Africa, which Africa was actually, it was Africa and South America was one continent, and when the continent split, Africa, the east part of that continent, they cut themselves off from the world. And because of the catastrophe of Lemurius and Atlantis, they cut themselves off. And they had an obligation to the world because they had the greatest technology and they had been around so long, but they cut themselves off and they dealt with their own, which caused them great grief and great anguish, and we are paying for it today because of that. China did the same thing. China cut themselves off from the world, and China was more brown people than yellow people back then. Although they had mulattoes, but it was China, it was Africa, China, and India. India tried to connect themselves to the world. They didn't cut themselves off so much, but Africa and China did. And because of that, we're suffering for it. Because we had an obligation to reach out and serve the world because we were far more advanced than the rest of the world. Although that's not what they teach you today. But it's evident when you go into the ruins of these places, whether it's Africa, South America, China, or India, you always find ancient civilizations. And they always find technology there. They even found 200-year-old batteries. They found cities that was hundreds of thousands of years old. They always, even the pyramids, they realizing that the pyramids were, and there's pyramids all over the world. There's hundreds of pyramids all over the world. They realizing that these probably were which the mystics knew. They were actually machines, and they were actually maybe the mystics say that they used it in order to teleportate from one place to the next, and they used it to generate energy. Now the scientists are coming to that understanding that that's what it was used for. But mankind have been here, the present mankind have been here for millions of years. The Adamic man was here for billions of years. So, and the first body type was the black body type. And you can go and read some of this. I think in the Secret Doctrines and Isis Unveiled, she talks about this. She talks about how we close ourselves off from the world, and the comic effect of that is that you had a greater obligation. It's like you just telling your kids, I'm not going to see about you anymore. And you let them go astray. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I'm blown away. I'm like, wow, why would they do that? But I wrote the book, The Secret Doctrines of Isis Unveiled, down to dig into that further. But I just, equated like our current state and what I've heard, through history. Like I knew there was something, I just, couldn't understand what it was and like why. But I will definitely dig deeper into that because I knew it was something. And thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the two texts you mentioned, Secret Doctrines and Isis Unveiled, the author is Madame Blavatsky. Those two books are available on the website as well, but they're difficult and advanced reads. I do plan on going through those texts in a future study session. You're welcome to read them and go through them and take notes and have questions, but I'm just letting you know they're pretty advanced texts, and they're written in like kind of an older English, but there's a lot of information there.
Thank you. I have come across some of her work, and it was very hard to read. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think that's probably why I put it back down.
Do you have any more questions? Nimai, before we go into the ancient language text, I did have a question, or a question I wanted to ask if you could expand further on the most recent audio lecture, A Practical Spiritual Approach. And specifically, I know I'm going to misquote it, but the quote by Dr. George King, or the line Dr. King, was that we kind of saying we have to first, in order to be a good metaphysician, we have to first go through physics, or to really understand metaphysics. Or how can you go beyond physics, metaphysics, if you have not first mastered physics and the physical sciences? Could you go a bit more into that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I told you all that over
Yes.
and over again.
Yes.
And you cannot.
Hence your approach with the International Mystic Knowledge Center and the way you teach us. Yes.
Yeah, you cannot go into metaphysics without understanding physics, and you have to understand that all science is a study of God's creation. If you are a spiritual person, you would realize this immediately, that scientists are not creating anything. Only thing they doing is examining what was here when they got here and finding out the laws behind that. And the laws behind that, as we know as yogis or mystic yogis, or that it is laws of God. It's the framework that the absolute God have put in place in order to hold manifestation together, this whole creation, whether it's the planet, the solar system, the galaxy, or the universe. There's a framework of laws that govern all these things. Now, the physical scientists call it physics. The yogi mystic or the metaphysician calls it metaphysics. Because why? Because the physical scientists will not entertain that there is a God. But the metaphysician entertained, yes, there is a God, and that there's a universal law that God put into place, and in order for you to truly understand this, you must understand these metaphysical laws. Because what the metaphysicians say today, the physical scientists would say tomorrow. The metaphysicians thousands of years ago said that there's atoms and there's subatomic particles. They may have not used the terminology that the physics use, but they clearly describe these things. And in my book, The Ancient Language of Soul, I clearly lay it out, showing you how they understood science as we understand it, and they went further than understanding the science. So metaphysics means after physics, because the after physics part is realizing that this is that these are divine laws, and that there's true meaning. It's not done in chaos. There's a meaning and pattern and direction and purpose to every law that's been put in place. So, I mean, that's the difference, and if you don't understand this, then you'll be an airy-fairy type person. You have to understand that everything is science. And when I say science, I mean, the metaphysical science, because there's no other science. You cannot study something physically without studying that thing on a subtle plane. Scientists are understanding this, because now scientists, what they do, they move from the gross physical to the subtle. Now they have explored the gross physical in gross physical matter, which is liquids, which is elements and minerals, and now they're exploring which is also electrons and atoms. But now they are looking at the subatomic particles and the string theories. The string theories is nothing but the Tavic rays. But of course, the ancient metaphysician talked about the Tavic rays and the nata they even looking at they realizing that there's a sound vibration coming from the sun and coming from the central sun, but the mystics talked about this millions of years ago. So so you cannot understand physics truly unless you cannot understand metaphysics unless you go to physics and realize that is the stepping stone to understanding metaphysics, you know, because it's just a graduate step. So you cannot dismiss scientists totally. You have to say, well, this is a stepping stone to understanding the power and the laws of God behind science, because that's what you get after physics, which is metaphysics.
Thank you. Now I'd like to jump into chapter 6, a review. But again, as we're moving through the highlights and some of the key points that I pulled out from this chapter, you can feel free to ask any questions or post any comments you have as we go along, and we'll answer those for you. Let me show the notebook here. Okay. So chapter 6 talks about the subtle powers of Nata and tracing the first spoken mantra through manifested Shakti. So you can go back to, I believe, study session 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's 4, study session 4. We get into 5 and 6. The first highlight comes from Nada powers radiating through the sun. It says the Nada power is the spoken word of the mighty sun, which is essentially the conscious will of the sun, which for all we know is to manifest a portion of its life on several planes of existence, promoting the will of God or the absolute. Now in chapter 8, we looked at last week, Nehemiah goes into a lot more detail about the body or the entity of the sun and how the planets exist within the auric envelope of the sun. He also talks about, as well as the sound, holy sound that is released every 32 minutes that carries the pranas and propagates them throughout the solar system and beyond, radius energies and beyond, how the planets take that energy within and in similar fashion conditions and then radiates that energy back out to the other planets and throughout the solar system beyond. And how this, Mother Earth, she does that as well. Takes those energies in, conditions them, and then radiates them out throughout all life streams upon Mother Earth to allow us to us to survive, to exist as we do. So chapter 8 goes into a lot of detail about that. The next bullet point or highlight is, in order to correctly pronounce this holy word, it takes the full use of the tongue. So here we're talking about the AUM. And Nehemiah gives us specific direction on how to properly pronounce that holy word. So if you're using that in your as part of your mantra japa practice, also, like for example, when we performing the 12 blessings, there are a couple of prayers, 3 in fact, where we recite the AUM in place of a prayer. We also recite the AUM at the end of some prayers, but you can also recite the AUM as part of your japa practice. And here we go into detailed information on how to properly recite the AUM. In order to correctly pronounce this holy word, it takes the full use of the tongue. In the ancient Upanishad, it is said that in the beginning of the pronunciation of this holy word, the tip of the tongue should be curled to the back roof of the mouth on pronouncing the A portion of this mantra. The tip of the tongue should move forward along the roof of the mouth in an upright position in the middle of the mouth while pronouncing the U portion of the mantra. The pronunciation of the M portion of the holy word is correctly done when the tongue terminates its movement at the front portion of the mouth while the mouth is partially open. This is why it is said that if you pronounce the AUM correctly, you speak all words, because in the pronunciation is the potential of all words. This great holy word is the first real Trinity power demonstrated throughout nature. And then we have this table, we go into more information. Also, I wanted to include in this, I don't have it available to show you, but I believe in the 9 freedoms available from the Aether Society, Mars Sector 6 goes into a, how would you describe them? Kind of an updating of our understanding of the AUM, or of expanding of our understanding of the AUM?
Yeah.
Yeah, expanding of our understanding. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yes, you're correct.
And expanding our understanding of the AUM, that first it's depicted as a triangle with the A at the top of the triangle, the U at the left corner of the triangle, and the M at the right corner of the triangle. And the traditional understanding of the AUM was creation, A, preservation, U, and the M, transmigration. What Mars Sectors is, and he expanded that understanding as creation, preservation, and transmutation. So if you take that beautiful oratory on the AUM produced by Mars Sector 6 and recorded in the 9 Freedoms text, you should go back and read that, and you read this sentence, the great holy word is the first real Trinity power demonstrated throughout nature, you'll see how they beautifully go together. And this text itself, Ancient Language of the Soul, really helps us to understand not just the science of mantra, but in the first word and in creation and in the mind of God itself, where we look at the AUM and break it down as the power throughout nature, and then take it back in our concentration and contemplations into that expansion given by Mars Sector 6 as what it really means to go from transmigration to transmutation. You can also listen to Dr. George King. He goes into that topic as well in his series of lectures on the 9 freedoms, as well as a lecture series on the AUM itself. So there's really a lot that's being said in just these 2 sentences here. But when you take that knowledge and you bring it into your japa yoga practice, that allows you to really open up and expand your consciousness to get a deeper understanding and really begin to open up the power of what you're doing when you're reciting that mantra. So it's one of the reasons why I'm really excited to begin the study sessions with this particular text. Because if we can begin to wrap our minds around the science and the power of mantra, then it really helps us to accomplish that goal of enlightenment. As the Mayas taught us, definition of enlightenment is predetermining all of our actions. And that is, you can only predetermine your actions through wisdom. So that's that highlight. The next highlight is the actual entire table, number 2, of Nada Shakti power. And I know it'd be easier for us to look at it if we go through the PDF and look at that table. So let me switch to that really quickly. And we can look at table 2 from chapter 6, the Nada Shakti power. I know I should have had this queued up beforehand. I apologize. Okay. So what is table 2 talking about? The initial power from the spoken word of the AUM from the absolute God is the manifestation of the Nada power from the Shiva power. This Nada power is a sound vibration that permeates the universe and gives the creative signatures of life to the Shakti power of creation. Oh, you guys can't see what I'm talking about, can you? I apologize. This holy sound vibration of the absolute holds the initial will of the supreme creator. This origination point of Nada not only delivers the conscious will of the absolute, but also forms a Nada Bindu, which is a massive point of conscious sound vibration that brings forward the Nada Shakti power. The Shakti power moves forward in an all-pervasive manner with the character signatures of the following. All right, so this table lists out the character signatures of the Shakti power as it moves forward in an all-pervasive manner. It gives a brief description of it. In both English and Sanskrit, first one we have will, Sanskrit Icha, is the first character signature of the Shakti power is the conscious will of the absolute. Sorry, my mind jumped somewhere. The second is knowledge, or Nana. This is this part of the character signatures represents the omniscient force of this Shakti power. And number 3, action, in Sanskrit Kriya. The third character signature within the Shakti power gives the power to move in all directions on all planes of existence. Now, I highlighted this because in this, for those of you who are a bit more advanced students, you should, at least I saw in this, and you should be able to see in this, the 7 dimensions of creation. I think we have lectures on that, but also the Air Society, through which the 7 dimensions of creation were given to Dr. George King. There's lectures on that as well. You can listen to that and then come back and look at this again, and you'll see it. As they might teaches us, it connects the dots. So that's why I highlighted that, because I was pretty excited to see that there. All right, let's move back to the highlights and move to the next one. Let me know if I'm going too fast, or if you have any questions. I'll slow down and allow everyone to better follow along. The Shakti power, armed with these signature characters, expands out, further pervading the whole universe. creating massive compacted points of concentrated nada and Shakti power, which is the Mahabindu, or the celestial beings of our solar system and many other systems. The sun, moon, and earth are the Mahabindu, or the great creative points of consciousness for mankind's realm of existence. This Shakti power takes on three distinct energy formations that help to bring about the right karmic conditions for the Nada power and the Shakti power to express itself on several levels of existence. These distinct energy formations are described as three devatas: Rudra, Vishnu, and Brahma in Sanskrit terminology. The first set of devatas, called Rudra, draws their power from the earth and the fire that extends from the earth. These nada sound vibrations arrange themselves according to energy signatures of the Mother Earth. The second devata is Vishnu, energy formation, and it draws its power from the sun. The formation of nada sound vibrations arrange themselves according to energy signatures of the mighty sun to produce the power qualities akin to the sun. The third set of devatas is called Brahma. Its energy configuration is developed from the power that radiates from the moon. The following table outlines the nada sound vibration power and Shakti power cosmic energies as it moves towards embodied consciousness. Now, I promise I didn't highlight the entire chapter, but I wanted to highlight and call to your attention these points because they're very important. And also, to better understand this point, sorry, I'm moving too quickly. There are a set of diagrams that we looked at last year in our open discussions, and those diagrams are available in the shared Google Drive folder. They should be both in the 2020 and 2021 folder. But really quickly, I wanted to go over where Nehemiah breaks down those groups and shows how they correspond to the chakras and to the petals. I believe this is the one. There's another one I want. It's a bigger one, but we'll look at this one first. So let me switch to that really quick. Okay, so this is the 4 states of sound diagram. And if you look at the title of it is additional diagrams.
It didn't come up.
Oh, it did not. Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can see it now. Okay.
Yeah.
So those 360 tatric rays that are pushed through the sun, right? In chapter 7 and chapter 8, we go into a lot more detail about it, how the energy is released from the absolute. Well, does sound say to the lords of creation, but we'll skip past that now. It goes to the central sun of the galaxies, and from the central sun of the galaxies, it goes to the suns of the particular systems. It goes to our sun. The sun takes energy, conditions it, and then releases it outwards. Those are tatric waves, and then they hit each planet and celestial body in turn, who then take that energy in, condition it, and release it back out. So you have this constant process happening throughout all of creation. And then when it comes to us, our three main celestial bodies that are modifying and providing these tattvic ray energies so that we're able to utilize them at our level of evolution is the moon, the sun, and the earth. And so this chart, this diagram expands on what we just read from table 2 and the following text of how those tattvic rays are broken down, the lokas that they are associated with and belong to, and then which centers or psychic centers or chakras they impact and affect for us to allow us to exist on these realms of these planes and help us throughout our evolution. So let's take a look.
The
Sorry?
locus, I should have put it here, is the realms of existence. Each one of those locus is realms of existence. And each one of the tattvic rays can exist, can represent 64 realms of existence on each one of those planes. Like the Christ Center, 64 realms of existence. The
Right.
Throat Center, 72 realms of existence. So just those people who don't know what that means.
Right, thank you. So further on in the text, there's a section dedicated, so in the text, Ancient Language of the Soul, there's sections dedicated to the 4 states of sound. So it may not make sense to you right now looking at it from this diagram, but if you go back and watch this past Friday's study session, or just listen to it, because it's really meant to be more like an audiobook type of format. Listen to it or read along chapters 7 and 8. More detailed explanation on the 4 states of sound are given. And then you can come back to this diagram and it'll present that same information, but visually.
Yeah, and one of the easiest way to understand this diagram is to start from the left to the right. And that is the 4 states of sound is what the soul uses to connect the embodied consciousness to the universe. So that's one way of looking at it. The soul actually mimic the absolute by speaking where it mimics the absolute and the spirit by speaking this life form into being. And it uses 4 states of sound in order to lock a part of its consciousness or part of its existence into the physical, astral, and etheric bodies. So that's what this teaches you. And when it used the para sound, the Pasyani sound, and all the other sounds, what it's doing, it gradually uses these different types of sound in order to form a matrix within a localized consciousness or auric field in order to lock a portion of itself into these layers of the bodies. And that's why we talk about the constitution of man, which is the spirit, the soul, the auric body, the Shakti, the Kundalini, and then the mind and the etheric body and astral body and physical body. And it uses this sound to lock it uses the 4 states of sound to lock the body in there. And then it uses the energy from all the realms of existence and the 4 Mahabindus in order to sustain the life in that cycle of life. And that's what this diagram really teaches you.
The question here, what is that sound? sorry. Is this why we will be kicked off of Earth when it evolves to where she should be? The Earth Tattvic rays influence our root and sex chakras.
Well, when the earth makes a when the earth rise above a certain level, then we will no longer be able to live here, because this type of energy will not be available for us if we still live in this gross state. Like I told you a couple of weeks ago, the physical and astral realms is actually wastelands, and is not necessarily a place that human life or animal life should be living, or or even plant life to a certain extent, unless it's a manipulation of energy for the plant life. Because when you look at the other physical realms of the solar system, you'll notice that from as far as we can see, is desolate, and it's like the way I look at it, it's like the bloodstream or the digestive system of a being, you know. And the physical realms of this solar system and the universe really is not a place where life forms should be. We should be living on the physical realms of the heart chakra and up. All the other chakras are extension of the heart chakra. So yeah, we cannot live here if the earth takes its rightful position in the solar system. You know, and that's why all the Bibles, whether it's the Jewish Bible, the Hindu Bible, the Christian Bible, the Buddhist, the Zoroaster, all of them talk about moving about the revelation of earth, and the earth rising to a different level, and mankind being taken off the earth. When you go and translate all these things, you'll see that that's what they're talking about. That when it's risen, the abundance of this energy would not be available, because the earth will take her rightful place. And when she take her rightful place, she'll release the energy that she's been keeping on the cover all these millions of years. And when she do that, there will be a transformation of earth, the same way she had to do a metamorphosis in order to lower her vibrations. She had to rise her vibrations, because karmic law only allow her to stay in the bands like that for so long. So that's what the Bibles are talking about throughout all the cultures. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, and a follow-up question: to remain on Earth, would we have to evolve to the solar plexus or heart chakra?
Yeah, I think I answered that. We have to move to the heart chakra at least. At least that's where the Adamic man was, and the Earth seemed to be moving on its progress. So yeah, we couldn't stay below, because the solar plexus, anything below the heart chakra was placed here after the fall of man, and the earth had to lower its vibrations in order to accept mankind.
So I'd like to bring your attention to these parts here. Right. So what's being referenced here is that the heart center, throat, and Christ center, those are the higher etheric realms, or what in Buddhist texts refer to as the heavens. And from the solar plexus to the base of the spine, solar plexus, sex, and the base of the spine, is the three basic and general astral realms. And then below the base spine, the lower astral realms, these are called the hells in the Buddhist text. So when humanity was introduced to the earth, these lower realms did not exist and had to be created for humanity to allow us to evolve and dwell here. Hence the earth, what Nimai was just talking about, and the lowering her vibrations to allow these realms to be formed. But once she returns back to her high rightful place, in other words, she'll return back to the etheric realms. These lower realms will no longer exist here. And as you mentioned before, the seat of our consciousness is here at the sex center. So if that is where our consciousness operates from, if those realms no longer exist, we cannot operate on this planet. So yes, we'd have to raise our consciousness and be able to operate on the higher etheric realms if we wish to remain the Mother Earth. So another question here is: a planet that is bigger than the sun. So this is a question referring to the new planet. Is it the planet that is behind the sun that people who cannot survive or remain on Earth will be able to live on or will be moved to? Beatrice was asking that question.
Yes, Beatrice, I think Dr. George King talked about that. That's the younger planet he referred to. And when the planet Meldeck was destroyed and the asteroid belt was formed, then another planet had to come in to create that balance. And that he described that younger planet being within and almost outside of the solar system, but it's on the opposite side of the sun, of Earth. That's why we don't readily recognize it. Although in recent years, I think 20 some years ago, maybe even 30, several scientists have recognized, and then some people even took pictures of it. And you just go and do your own research on that. And some people say that it becomes visible in certain areas of the world during the rotation of the Earth around the sun. So yeah, that's the younger planet that the mystics and the yogis say that that life forms that are not ready will have to continue their advancement on that planet. So there's in Revelation they talk about the 144,000 that will remain here. So of course that number is not a real number, we don't think, but it's a symbology. It's a number of symbology or some type of I don't know what to call it, but there's there is some type of truth connected to that a small percentage of the population will be left here. Hope that answers your question.
Okay. So like Nima was saying, to better understand this handout, we should move from left to right. So let's do that. And I guess we can start at the base and work our way up. So at the base of the spine has 4 petals. And there is Para sound here at the left-hand side. It is unmanifested, motionless sound, the Shiva state of creative consciousness that manifests the endless potential of life. We move up to the Sex center, has 6 petals, and those 2 centers together make up the Rudra Granti conversion point of 118 tattvic rays. At the base is the Bud Loka, that's 56 tattvic rays. At the Sex is 62 tattvic rays at the Bhuvar Loka, and together that is the tattvic fire rays Agni Kanda group. The energy is manipulated by the earth. At the solar plexus center, which has 10 petals, we love the second Pasyanti sound. Excuse me. Now the first manifested movement of sound as powered consciousness for generating energy patterns that moves forward to build vehicles of expression. At the heart center, that text box there, you have the Madhyama sound, the subtle aspect of sound that unlocks the intelligent signatures and signals of sound consciousness that builds all the subtle bodies, including the mental, pranic, etheric, and astral bodies. The heart center containing 12 petals, and together the solar plexus center, it makes up the Vishnu Granti converging point of 106 tattvic rays. The heart center is the Mahar Loka, 54 tattvic rays. Solar plexus center is the Swa Loka with 52 tattvic rays, and they both belong to the Sura group, energy manipulated by the sun, the tattvic ray, sun rays. Then at the throat center, we have the 4 Vaikari sound, the subtle gross sound moves subtle energies and the mental thought forms to gross vehicles of expression as body and sound. Throat center having 16 petals, and the Christ center having 2 petals. Together, they make up the Brahma Granti, converging point of 136 tattvic rays. And the throat center is the Nana Loka with 72 tattvic rays, and the Christ center is the Tapo Loka, 64 tattvic rays, and those belong to the Chandra group of the energy manipulated by the moon. And I have here table 3 highlighted as well. So let's look at table 3, where some of the seed mantras are, and the petals are delineated. I won't specifically read through them, but give you a better idea of the inner nada and Shakti within the chakra system. So as we just looked at before, we looked at the Devatas and the Mahabindu celestial beings, the particular centers. But first look at the base and the Sex center belonging to the Rudra group of the earth, energy manipulated by the earth. And you can see here the Nada force expresses through the Bindu, and these are the seed matches for those Bindus. For the base of the spine and the Sex center, and on the right here you have the Nada force expressed from the Bindu, the chakra bijas, and the Devatas conversion points, and these are the Sanskrit letters that are presented on the petals of the corresponding chakras. Next, we had the Vishnu group, or the sun, associated with the solar plexus and the heart chakra. Those are the seed mantras for those centers respectively, and the petals as well. And then the Brahma group, or the moon, representing the throat and Christ chakras. Those are their seed mantras, and the letters or vowels for the throat and Christ center. Do we have any questions before I continue onward with the rest of the highlights? I'll give you guys a chance to ask your questions. If not, let's move back to the text and continue reviewing the highlights. This thing's still paused? Okay. Next highlight is each chakra seed mantra being issued from the bindu is used to express a stigma of the soul's manifested consciousness on the subtle and gross realms of existence. There's a question there what you meant by stigma, but it's answered later on in the text. The major chakras along the spine express this one-syllable seed mantra. These one-syllable chakra seed mantras uses these sound vibrations to cause a reformation of the nada and Shakti forces that further converge and reformat themselves, creating what is called the chakra petals, with its bit of sound vibrations that make up what is called the letters of the Sanskrit language. These letters emit sound vibration that create tube-like sonic vibrations that become the carrying agents for mental and vital forms of cosmic energies, which are called the nadis. These nadis split the cosmic energies into three major types of energy flows. These sonic vibrations emitted from the letters create the pathways of movement for the positive, negative, and neutral flow of energies. These point conversion of these three types of energy flows create points and levels of consciousness that mankind work from on the subtle and gross realms of existence. Sorry, sorry about that. I mute my phone. And so this table here looks at the Trinity, table 4, Trinity phases of Nada and Shakti power. We kind of went into that before. I did want to draw attention to the Sattvic, Rajas, and Tamas, the Gunas, but we'll go into more detail later on in the text. In the metaphysical circles, the triangle symbol is used to express the will of God. Each point of the triangle represents the bindu, point of consciousness. The first 2 points are the Shiva and the Shakti. The third point is the relationship between Shiva and Shakti. This trinity of power brought about by Shiva and Shakti repeats itself over and over again throughout the process of involution and evolution in creation. It masks itself in many forms of cosmic energy and mind substance under a framework of various aspects of the divine law in order to bring about multi-levels of limited consciousness in a framework of time units. All right, so there you have it. Creation, preservation, and transmutation, so that we return, as Dr. King mentioned, as conscious gods. That's that transmutation aspect. And also there you can see the 7 dimensions, right? Which is will, mind, motion, time, length, breadth, and height. But we can go into more detail about that in another session. I said that right anyway? There's a will,
Yeah.
will, mind, motion. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Next highlight, in ancient science of mantra sastra, it is said that sound mantra produces shape, right? So if you look at some of those old experiments where they put sand onto a metallic plate and they vibrate different frequencies of sound through the metallic plate, and the sand particles take on various shapes and forms. Right? It's a gross example of what's being described here. The production of shapes indicate that there is some degree of intelligence at play to hold and govern that shape together. They understood that a specific note and pitch in a body of mind substance and cosmic energy will produce particular shapes or forms. On a cosmic level, these shapes and forms are the macrocosmic creation, such as the ever-expanding body of the universe, the countless galaxies and solar systems. On a solar level, these shapes and forms can be seen as the mighty suns within the solar systems, its orbiting planets, and the orbiting moons of each planet. On the microcosmic levels of forms and shapes, we have the human expression of life on the most subtle manifested level to the grossest level of manifestation. We also have the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and mineral kingdom, all parts of these microcosmic levels of forms and shapes that exist on the etheric, astral, and physical planes of existence as well. Behind the forms and shapes is the sound vibration that governs the command for action. All right, so if you remember earlier, when we looked at in the text, you might have stated how the soul repeats a sound, and that sound contains the signatures for the formation of the aura and the bodies, and those are the vehicles of expression that the soul utilizes. Right? So it's not just on our level, but on throughout the entirety of creation. That same process is repeated from the galaxy all the way down to a stone or a plant, a cat, a human being, and so on. When the Shakti power is projected from Shiva with the first spoken word, Vak, the initial universal sound vibration, it is said that it expresses 3 aspects of itself. Right, this is calling back to that table we looked at earlier, which are the universal power, Icha, the universal power of knowledge, Nana, and the universal power of action, Kriya. These initial aspects of the Shakti power tend to set the nature, prakriti, of this thing we call creation. The willpower is the expression of the initial sound of the word from Shiva, or God. It shows the superior consciousness of the will to release the Shakti power. The universal mind power of knowledge conforms or sets limitations for this initial power that was set in perpetuated motion by the first word or sound vibration from Shiva or God. This power of knowledge is a divine law of God or karma. It configures the power by setting the rules and regulation that move in parts and segments of time, kala, that allow the Shakti power to involve itself and evolve itself back to its original source. The universal power of action is the power that is used by everything that moves or seeks to move. It is the power of all things and is used by the power of all things. So Jay Charisse, hope I said that properly. This is going back to your question earlier of karma. So here we have an explanation of that, and pretty much all throughout the text, you're going to have further and further and further explanations of exactly what is karma and how it applies to us. All right, Ivan, thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to chatting with you soon. Take care. So the next point, we look at the gunas. I mentioned that earlier. So we're going to look at them now. The text preceding that says, in all bodies of matter, there are the three gunas, qualities in manifested matter. There are the sattvic gunas, rajas gunas, and tamas gunas. These gunas can be described as follows. The sattvic qualities or gunas are the pure wave of consciousness that molds manifested matter with positive imprints of all right thoughts and actions that arrive from true awareness. It is the inner knowledge of the higher self that inspires mankind at the proper karmic times of his life. The sattvic state elevates consciousness and transcends the Shakti power to pure consciousness. Oh, we're almost out of time. Okay, let me hurry up.
Veronica has a question, Dwayne.
Oh, sorry. Does someone have to remain expressing at higher chakras to evolve during a given lifetime? What happens or what is happening when someone expresses negative and positive traits?
Well, you just asked me what happens in life, because all of us express negative and positive traits. The goal is to move forward on whatever level you're at, not to stay stagnant, and to evolve. We notice when we evolve that things get better for us, things become stable. You know, the more knowledge and understanding you have in life, and the more you apply that knowledge and understanding, the life around you stabilizes, which allows you a forward movement. When there's chaos, it's hard to have a forward movement. When there's no chaos, then you have a clear pathway. It's just like going down the road. If chaos means that there's no road and you have trees, brush, everything, there's no pathway. People just drop what they want to drop wherever it is, and you have to go around it. Knowledge and understanding give you the forethought to create a pathway or a roadway in order to move forward. So by doing that, you abandon certain actions and thoughts and patterns that will stop you from moving forward. So that's what the impurity traits that I listed from the ancient teachings. They list like 21 impurity traits that creates blockages in our mental pathways or our nadis or chakras to move us off the pathway and have us to engage in those desires or those bad habits. When we gain control over our mental bodies and pathways, then we remove those impurity traits and we see a clear pathway in order to evolve and raise our consciousness. So it's a constant battle, it's a constant interchange of mind energy and perspective. You know, when the Master Jesus said, turn the other cheek, I think he was talking about turn the other, you know, look at it from a different perspective. When someone strike you on one side of the face, he said, turn the other cheek. I think he was actually saying, look at it from a different perspective. If you turn the other cheek, what do you have? If you strike back, what do you have? I mean, you have to look at it from a different perspective, you know, and that person who's striking you, do they have the power to eliminate that your life at that time? Or if you turn the other cheek, can you survive to another day? You know, so you have to look at it from a different perspective. It's looking at it from a different angle. What would be your next move? That's predetermining your actions. That's wisdom, that's knowledge, that's understanding. You know, you don't meet violence with violence every time. So it's just so you have to constantly weigh and predetermine every action you make in order to make a forward progress. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Veronica. I think you wanted to say
So
something.
I was just going to say thank you. Yes, it does.
I know we're over the 2-hour mark. Just please give me a few more minutes. I want to finish up chapter 6 today, so we can move into 7 next time. The Rajas qualities is a mental wave of consciousness that permeates through all matter, giving rise to mental passions of all kinds: lust, greed, violence, false vision, jealousy, desires, etc. Rajas is also described as being the nature of attraction springing from thirst or desire of things and needed attachment, which produces bondage through clinging to the action of things. The tamas qualities is the inert energy void of any light. It's a dark wave of consciousness that permeates all throughout matter. This darkness brings about fear, confusion, hopelessness, grief, as well as hunger and thirst. The tamas in this state of being that most animals and primitive man work from. These 3 gunas cannot be separated in any embodied consciousness, organic or inorganic, though in every case, one of the gunas may appear to predominate throughout the existence of its manifestation. It's because of this, in organic or inorganic matter, we find some point of rudimentary sentient life. This is the sattvic guna forces expressing its Shakti qualities. All right. So that completes the highlights and bullet points for chapter 6. Next open discussion, we'll look at chapter 7. I want to do chapter 7 and 8 in separate open discussions because they're big chapters. There's a lot of information in them, and I want to take our time in going through them. And with that said, if you go back and watch this Friday's study session, I take the full 2 hours because there's a lot of information to cover in 7 and 8. So, you know, you can break up that study session into multiple listening sessions. It's the full 2 hours that I'm reading chapter 7 and chapter 8, particularly chapter 8. And chapter 8 is the longer of the two, but they're both pretty long. But there's a lot of information in it. So take your time going through it, reading those chapters. Take your notes, and then when we come back next Sunday for open discussion, we'll look at chapter 7, and then the following Sunday, we'll look at chapter 8. So do we have any final questions or comments before we close out today's open discussion? If there are no further questions, let's close out today's open discussion with reciting the New Lord's Prayer. Oh, and really quickly, Jay, Charisse, the way we pray is by utilizing prayer mudra. So I can refer you to a class we give it out. Well, okay. Well, so we raise our hands, the palms open, and if you can, face the east, but if not, that's okay as well. And what we do is we visualize a white light coming down from the atmosphere, from the Mother Earth, down our heads, shoulders, and traveling out the heart center, which is a few inches or centimeters in front of the breastbone. We also visualize that white light traveling down and coming out through the palms of our hands. And when we recite the prayer, we use the words of the prayer to impregnate that energy and give that energy purpose and direction as we send it out to the world, be it for healing, spiritual upliftment, or whatever reason you're sending the energy out for. Then once we conclude the prayer, we dust our hands off like that. That's another, I'm just giving out mudras today. You dust off your hands to stop the flow of energy so that you don't deplete yourself, and you say quietly to yourself, it is done. That way, if someone's sitting next to you, they don't hear you say it, and that's how we conclude the prayer. We have other classes where we go into detail about the prayer mudra and the prayer technique that you can look at. And I think if you join us next time, we'll ask Mr. Davis and Nehemiah to go into more information about it, if you wish. The New Lord's Prayer. O divine and wondrous Spirit, O everlasting Lord of hosts, send forth now through me thy great and lasting power. Allow me, Almighty God, the lasting privilege of radiating to all the world thy great love, so that those who suffer may be given the power and energy to rise above their weaknesses. Almighty God, in great humility do I ask you to send forth your power to give to me this great lasting privilege of being a channel, so that my suffering brothers may be helped and guided and healed and lifted into thy light, so that they who know not may look up, and in doing so receive through their higher selves your divine counsel. Almighty God, this day have you granted me a divine privilege. I ask you now to give to me the strength so that never again will I turn from my inner vision of you. Oh, great peace, great peace, great peace. In praise of your greatness, O God, doth my soul sing. Grant it energy to sing on forever and forever. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance, for your questions, and for your comments.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. See you next week.